Alright, so one of the basic things that we need to get through before we can actually define the volume of a figure is line of action. And the line of action is something that's going to give us definition to the action, emotion, or attitude of your figure. Okay, it's an imaginary line that runs through the top of the head down through the pelvis. Okay, and so even when we're looking at a figure that's pretty much straight on, there's still going to be a little bit of curve to the spine. Okay, I wouldn't want to get out a ruler to define my figure. This is one of the, looking ahead, we're going to be looking into block construction as well. And one of the dangers of going right to block construction is we tend to think about the figure geometrically. Okay, and that's a good thing for defining volume, but it's a bad thing for defining all of these actions, emotions, and attitudes. And so before we get there, we have to make sure we capture that in a line of action. Okay, so if these are the shoulders here, the line of action, and the pelvis is here, the line of action runs right down the middle of there. Okay, and it'll also give a little turn to your head. It'll give a direction to the head as well. Now, before we get any further with that, I want to talk real briefly about technique, because this is really important before we start drawing. If I've got my arm here, right, and I've got my, let's say I'm drawing, okay, and if I'm a beginning artist, I'm used to drawing on a relatively small piece of paper, right? Maybe I'm used to drawing on a little notebook, or maybe even, you know, like a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. That's what I'm used to doing. And so the result of that is I'm used to drawing from here. I'm used to drawing from the wrist, okay? And used to making these curves that are very small, and it's not real helpful when I move to a larger pad of paper. So let's say I'm working at like 18 by 24, like we should be for these assignments. That's a lot bigger, a lot more surface to cover. Okay, and so the more advantageous thing is going to be working from your elbow and your shoulder, preferably. Preferably, you should be making these big, long strokes with your shoulder. All right. So going back to what that looks like in line of action, I should be defining the spine in these long strokes rather than these little hatch mark strokes. I still may wind up with something that is relatively smooth with this second version here, but my preference is to develop this instinct between your eye and your hand and your brain to define the curve. And you may have to draw several of them, but I'd rather see it as one stroke. Okay, what that does is it gives a lot more fluidity to your line of action. It brings everything together a little bit more naturally when you're drawing these curves from your shoulder, from your elbow, and they have a lot more lyrical quality to them.